Shrimp tank! Hello again, friends. If you're new here, welcome to Bob Moss Nanotanks. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back to Bob Moss Nanotanks. How you doing? I've missed you. So today we just got another 10-gallon tank. Going to be turning this into a beautiful planted Neocaridina tank. We're going to go a little more advanced than last time. Stay tuned to find out all the details. Alright, so I'll quickly go over the supplies you need so that those at home that want to follow along can aquascape with me as well. So I have some black blasting sand here. This is black diamond sand blasting sand that you can get from Tractor Supply Co. That's TSC stores in Canada and in the USA. Make sure you give it a good rinse or it will leave a really gross residue in your tanks. Over here I have a nice chunk of driftwood that I bought at a local fish store. I have some dragonstone here that I've been culturing in my cold tub and some other stuff I've pulled out. Just some chunks of dragonstone. And over here I have some various plants, Java Fern, Subwasser Tang, Java Moss, Salvinia. Got this all out of the wonderful cold tub over here. This is just a beautiful little grow op that I've had going for a while. I also have some crushed coral off screen. So now let's get into it. Let's put this sandblasting sand in. I'm going to layer it a little bit thicker than I did in the video 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Just because I'm going to be doing some root tabs and some rooted plants in this. I am going to be adding in some Rotala in the later stages. So, you know, add in a little bit more than what I did last time. Try and level it out. Do a little bit of grading. Do a tiny attempt of grading. I have some fun hardscape as you saw for this tank. Don't be afraid to take a step back and see what you're dealing with. You don't always have to look at it from above. And like I said with the sandblasting sand last time, it is not sharp. It is just very, very hard. So it's not going to hurt your livestock. And now we're going to add in this chunk of wood. This is a beautiful piece of driftwood that I picked up, like I said, from a local fish store. It's got this wonderful texture to it, but it is a little bit big, so I'm gonna have to play around with it a little bit here. I'm gonna have to dig out some substrate to get it below the water line. I don't want it above the water line because shrimp will crawl out. I've had that happen a couple times in my experience. Been doing this for a few years. And don't forget when you pull your aquascaping brush out to just bang that sand off.
And just beat the devil out of it.
Now that I got the piece of wood in where I want it, I'm just gonna, you know, push the substrate up, grade it, get it looking more normal because I did mess with it there. And then we're gonna add in this dragonstone. This dragonstone's gonna be a bit of an adventure. I have a rough idea of what I want to do with it, but I'm not 100%. So let's have some fun. As you can see, I have a couple very unique pieces of dragonstone to play with here. You will see more as Escape develops. This is also called okostone for those who didn't know. It's an excellent choice for all types of shrimp tanks because it is inert. Unlike something like Ceru stone that will increase your TDS over time, this does not affect your water parameters. Wow. When you first get your dragonstone, you'll want to soak it and give it a good rinse as it'll be dirty as fuck due to it being a natural rock pulled, well, out of the earth. Bruh. When I'm scaping, I try to roughly follow the rule of thirds, but I also adjust things to my own liking, so it may not be picture perfect for some of you aquascaping nerds out there. As you can see, I adjust this particular scape a lot. Rather than talking you through every time I change my mind, I figured we would let this develop and I could talk to you about some general aquascaping tips. How about that?
How about that?
So first, it's important to note that these are just general tips and guidelines and not hard set rules. Do what you want, baby. I'm sure it'll look gorge. So let's start with something I already mentioned. The rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a guide to make sure your hardscape is placed in an aesthetically pleasing manner. It is meant to help control where the viewer's eye will travel and what they focus on. Photographers have used this technique forever, and it's a great thing to remember when building your aesthetic scapes at home. The basic idea is that you divide the tank into 9 equal parts using a grid. Think of the front pane as a photo. You want to think about where you want the eyes to be drawn to first, as that is the focal point, and from there, the eye will wander onto the complementary pieces of the scape. The idea of the grid helps you place these points appropriately. I will try to illustrate it on the screen as I build these, but essentially you want to have your focal point in on the top intersection here, and then your secondary elements over on the opposite bottom intersection. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to keep it pretty simple here. You can also apply this grid when looking from the top down. Doing this will help add some nice depth to the scape, but it's not necessary. If you keep this in mind when planning your tanks, you will always have beautiful scapes, like me. We interrupt these aquascaping tips to bring you crushed coral. Crushed coral will help add a KH value back into your tank to help stabilize your pH in inert setups like Neocaridina shrimp tanks. So a great tip that many people forget is trimming your stem plants a couple weeks into the new scape. This will help them grow in thicker and better adapted to the new tank parameters. In my case, I probably won't experience melt as all my water is the same, but if you just bought new plants, you can expect some melt in many types, including some of my favorites, Crypts and Rotala. So trimming off the melted parts, the melted stem, will help it regrow nice and thick and beautiful for you. Yay! It's also good to mix plant types and colors in rough groupings, so when they grow in, you have little pockets and splashes of the different shades and colors. In my case, I'm not going all out, but you'll see what I do with the Rotala and Java Fern in a little bit here.
I guarantee you, everybody's gonna notice it.
And now, in my opinion, dark substrate just looks better. It also helps the shrimp have better color. I'm gonna have a whole video on that specifically, so I'll just mention it in passing here and keep you wondering. Ooh. It does depend on what you're going for. Some biotopes and ideas do turn out better on lighter substrate, but as you can see what I'm doing here, once you go black, you don't go back. Something I'm guilty of in a couple of my scapes, including this one, is having the substrate too deep at the front. This does make the tank look less professional, but if you're using root tabs like I am, I cannot recommend enough using at least 2 to 3 inches of substrate wherever you put the tabs in order to prevent dangerous leaching, especially in our shrimp tanks. You can look back at my last setup for a better example of having the substrate thin at the front and grading it towards the back. Remember, these aren't rules, they're just tips, and it's okay to ignore some of them if it's better for your setup.
You can create any world that you want.
And now, if you don't take any other advice, just listen to this. If you're going to use carpeting plants, keep them to the front of your tank. They will spread to the back over time. If you put them there initially, they will take over. And dear God, look at my Bloody Mary carpet now. And I've taken stuff out in an attempt to control it. I planted that hair grass too far back, and while it still looks nice, the hair grass, it runs this tank now. And I ended that with near perfect timing as I finish up putting in this Java Fern into the little grooves and nooks in the Dragonstone, just like I did last time. I am going to take one of these and put it in the substrate. And remember, Java Fern is a rhizome feeder, so if you're going to put it in the dirt, you do not want to bury that rhizome. You just want to put the roots. So what you can see here, I'm grabbing the roots with the forceps, and I'm literally just sticking the roots in. I'm trying, got to keep that rhizome above the soil level so that it doesn't get covered with the dirt. It will cause it to rot and the plant will die. So I just have the roots in there loosely. Hopefully they'll grip the sand before, things get in there, the snails mess it up. I also have some Subwasser Tang and Java moss that I am going to just toss behind this, so you're not going to see it.
Just drop them in.
But it is going to be there to help out the shrimp, become a little hiding place for the baby shrimp, pregnant shrimp, stuff like that. And as you saw while scaping, I did toss in a piece of cholla wood that had a bunch of Java Fern attached to it as well. And now we're getting ready to plant the Rotala, so I'm going to add in some extra substrate over in this corner. I'm going to grate it a little bit with my Aquascaping brush to try and get it, just the right shape and well, grade for what I want to do. I don't want it to be a mountain like it initially was, so just trying to level it out, bang the sand off the brush. And a little tip here to help it is to squirt it with some water. That will just help kind of get the sand looking like what it's going to look like when the water's in the tank, right? So get the sand off the glass. I kind of just spray it around so that it levels it out, and now you can see there's a nice grade there. Going to spray the wood so that that's where the flow is going to come down, and then now it's time to add in the flourish root tabs. If you've watched this channel for a while, I use the Seachum flourish tabs, and you want to make sure these are 2 to 3 inches deep like I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to push this all the way down to the bottom. And now another way you can do this is just plop the tab onto the top of the dirt like you're going to see here in a minute, and then go grab that Aquascaping brush, the gravel substrate brush, whatever this is called, and use that to push. I find this works a decent bit better than using forceps or tongs, because there's two sides. They want to spread apart, where this is just one thing. And then we cover them up and we get ready to plant the Rotala. I am going to squirt some water in here one more time just to clean up the sand, and then we're going to grab the Rotala and get it planted. Now Rotala is super easy to plant. It's even easier now that I don't have any water in here to, you know, lift them up and cause them to float. You just grab them, a couple leaves up on the stem, and you slam it down as far as you can, and then the leaves will prevent it from pulling back up. Where if you go and plant, say, crypts, and you stick the roots in when you release the forceps and pull the forceps out of the dirt, sometimes you pull the roots out too, and it gets messy. With the Rotala, because of the shape of the plant, basically it's not going to do that. It's going to stay there, be beautiful, be super easy, just slide in. And yeah, it looks like we're done here. So the scape is pretty much finished at this point, and just like last time, I got it ready in a spot that I could better maneuver. So I do have to move it up onto the shelf. Going to lift with my legs, make sure to support it underneath so as not to cause any cracking, and ta-da, it's in place. Now we're just going to start adding in the water. This is going to take a bit because obviously I'm doing it through an airline. I want to get some of the sand off the glass here. That's just personal thing. I'm going to use this hose and just kind of even out the sand in some spots, because when you put the sand in, it gets a little lumpy and it gets all over the rocks as well. So get the sand off the rocks, get the sand off the wood, and then we're going to end up putting the hose over the sponge filter, just like last time. That will dampen, is that the right word? It will baffle the flow from this hose, and it will prevent it from kicking up too much sand and too much stuff. And we'll be back in a little bit here when there's a little bit more water in the tank. All right, now we're back. It is still filling, but I had a look at it. I took a step back, and it isn't quite what I want.
Because, you know, we don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents.
So what I'm going to do here is put in a couple more root tabs over on the left side, slam them down here with the Aquascaping brush, or the whatever the hell you call this thing. And just like I explained a couple seconds ago, whatever. And I'm going to be planting some Rotala on this side. Now you can see there is water in here, so there is a chance the Rotala will float. So I do have to be a bit more careful when I slam it down and release it. But if you just put it in kind of as deep as it goes, so that there's just a little chunk sticking out there, it will root nice and deep. It will stay nice and deep for you, and this will it'll kind of balance the scape is what I'm looking at. So there was nothing on this side. The left side of my scape was looking a little boring. That's why I wanted to put some Rotala in here. I'm also going to add in my salvinia at this time, floating plants. There's some Java fern leaves we'll take out in a second, but I like salvinia as a floating plant because the roots don't get too long. I used to have frogbit in all my tanks, but I've since removed it because I just don't like how long the roots get, and it starts to mess with your scape after a while. I'm also going to add in my Ramshorn snails at this time. These guys will, you know, create waste, create ammonia, help the cycle, even though I am using a matured sponge filter from one of my previous shrimp tanks. That will probably help the cycle go a lot faster. I'll have details on that in a little bit. The Ramshorn snails will create more waste. I'm also adding in some nettle food pellets here, and finally some Bacter AE. Mix this all up. That will just help, you know, grow biofilm, create the ammonia for the cycle, make sure the bacteria is growing, make sure that all the surfaces get good biofilm and algae growth. Something else I also do when I'm cycling my tanks like this is 24/7 light. I add stability in here. I also am going to add fertilizers. Sechem Prime is good for about 48 hours, so on day 3 I start to add in fertilizers, and I will kind of overdose the fertilizers while the tank is cycling, and that kind of kickstarts algae growth and biofilm growth, and it just helps the tank get nice and mature for your shrimp. I'm also going to take this time to hook up the sponge filter, just because, you know, minimal wetness when it's only half full like this, rather than dealing with an entire full tank. Nothing too big of a deal there.
That's okay.
And because this is already a matured filter, like I mentioned, I am hoping that this tank will actually be cycled very, very quickly. I'm going to give it about a week and then check the parameters. You guys are going to see a video on that very, very soon, actually. I think maybe next week. And ta-da, here we are, the finished product, the finished tank. It's beautiful, it's scaped, it's starting to cycle. We got the Ramshorns in there, all the plants. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. Thank you all so much for watching this setup video. If you sit through this little outro spiel, I got a little surprise for you at the end here. A big shout out to my patrons. They've been with me for months now. Brian Dotson, Michael Redmond, and Leather Turtle. You guys truly are amazing. Thank you as well to my YouTube channel members. All of these guys have also been supporting me for quite a while. Jamie Anderson, Tater Salad, Robert Redmond, Rival, Poseidon's Pets, and Mitch Bottomaw, who runs Shrimp Effects, shrimpfx.ca. And he sent me some of his homemade shrimp food to try at no charge. That was awesome. Thank you so much. If you want a shout out at the end of all my videos, the Patreon and member links are in the description. If you didn't watch last week's video, I have a new web store, bobmoss.shop. Be sure to check that out. Link in the description. 24/7 Twitch stream, Discord fan club, and PayPal donation. Links are all in the thinger down there as well. Do me a favor, like the video, leave a comment below, any comment. You can even insult me. I will find it funny, and you should subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, or else Grogu gets it. Now, time for that surprise. What could it be? Turns out using the old sponge and my tried and true never fails, always works 60% of the time, every time method of growing biofilm and algae quickly.
That doesn't make sense.
This tank tested good and was ready for the shrimp within a week. I am proud to introduce you to my all new green jade shrimp tank. Yeah! Jamie, you will love this. I previously had the green split from Valley Aquatics and Shrimp Life, but I have now combined them, and I tried my best to split out the blues and the more clear ones, so in here are only shrimp that contain green, I hope. In case you were wondering, the last tank setup is now a blue shrimp tank that I bred from the Shrimp Life green jades, but you'll have to watch my stream to see them, I guess. Go watch it now. Alright guys, that's all for now. Thanks again for watching to the end. You are my #1 fans, and remember, till next time, keep your shrimp hand strong. Bye-bye now.